Can we take a roll call before we start also, Michelle?
Absolutely. That's what I say. I'll call the meeting to order, and then do you want to go ahead and do the roll call?
Yeah, and Teresa, just call each person by name. And
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Joycelyn? Charlotte? Here. Michael?
Here.
John?
Yeah, here.
Lori?
Here.
Yummy?
Here.
Steve? Brent?
Here.
Noel?
Here.
Ron? Rita?
Here.
And Michelle?
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I am not doing. Okay. Go ahead and go on the approval of the agenda. Everybody have a chance to take a look?
Brent, I make a motion to approve.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second, Charlotte. Thank you.
All right. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. And do you want to do roll call votes, Teresa? How do you want to do that?
We probably should, since you all are on the call tonight. Yes. Okay, so I'll just run through here again. John?
Yeah.
Brent?
Yes.
Rita?
Yes.
Charlotte?
Yes.
Yummy?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And that, I need to do the consent agenda as well, right? Yep.
right, consent agenda's next.
Okay. All right, can I get a motion for approval of consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Who said second?
Rita.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rita. Okay, the vote, John?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Michelle? I'm sorry, Michelle. Rita?
Yes.
Charlotte?
Yes.
Yummy?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll move on to, I guess I also should welcome our new members. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Welcome, Noel and Lori. Sorry, we're just trying to move right along. Let's see. Move on to awards. Oh, okay. Welcome, Joycelyn.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to awards and recognition.
Right, so I was going to make sure that we did stop and say hello to Noel and Lori, our new board members from Clay County. So hello and welcome. Teresa and I were able to speak with both before the meeting. So they are drinking from the fire hose, just like everybody else, but have been through an orientation. And I know we're all looking forward to being together in the same room and being able to talk with one another. The other two recognitions that we had is that we did have that we did want to recognize former board members, Trent Skaggs for 10 years of service and Jane Reinert for 7 years of service. And we've been continuing to send them updates and accolades, and we will continue to do that. Last thing that I have in terms of a recognition is the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce has named Mid-Continent Public Library as a certified healthy KC workplace and certified us at the platinum level. Some other board members may remember that we have received some level of certification through the Kansas City Chamber for this over the last several years. And I think over the last 2 years, at least, meaning this will be our 3rd year, that we've been recognized as a platinum member, as at the platinum level. So I think that concludes our awards of recognition that I know of.
Okay, great, thank you. Visitors' comments, do we have any, Teresa?
No, none were forwarded.
All right, then I guess we will move on to Quan.
Okay. During the month of December, we have received a total amount of tax revenue for $18,711,869, which is about 11% higher than last year's. And the total operating revenue over $19 million, 35% of the budget.
Yeah, please advance to slide 8.
You're going to go to the next slide, please.
That's the one that's the first slide. And the second one, please.
Now to slide 9, please.
Okay, that's the expenditure side of the operating fund. For payroll and benefits, we spent about $14.8 million, 46% of the budget. Library materials, we spent about $5.4 million, or 47% of the budget. All other operational accounts is about $3.8 million, 37% of the budget. Next one, please. That's the debt service fund. In the middle of the report, you can see we received a total amount of interest from Bank of Kansas City for about $110,286. Most of that amount was received about a year ago. Right now, due to the current market condition, we received almost nothing from Bank of Kansas City for interest income. But we continue to receive significant amount of interest from Texas, which is about $50,000 a month now, for a total amount of $3.2 million. That's the total amount we received since the beginning of the COPS. And also, we requested a total amount of disbursement back to the library for about $54.7 million, leaving a cash balance about $28.6 million. Since July 2019, we have made a total amount of interest payment for about $5.9 million, and the principal payments for about $8.8 million. The next one, please. That's the capital project fund. At the end of the month, we have spent about $474,000 for the historical home at Woonies. And for capital plans, we spent close to $15 million so far this year. Next one. That's the gift and grant fund. On that list, we have about 10 active grants so far, and we spent about $240,640 this year, and we received about $156,740. Last month in December, for the CARES Act 2021, we received $79,800 from the state and $45,800 from Jackson County. The next one is the health insurance fund. The total amount of contribution from both the library and the employees is close to $1.9 million. And the total amount of expenses for fixed costs and admin fee is about $481,000. And we paid out $1.25 million for medical claims. Also, at the end of the month, the total amount of cash on hand is close to $1.8 million, leaving a fund reserve balance for about $1.5 million. That's my report for the month.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions? Okay, if not, then we'll move on to old business committee reports. Are we going to start with personnel, Steve?
Yeah, personnel's first on the agenda, and I heard Joycelyn come online, so I think we can do
Yes.
that.
Yes, kind of would like to
Welcome,
go in,
Joycelyn.
hi, thank you. Good to hear everybody. Um, this is a time of year where we look to evaluate the progress on goals. The way we've done it traditionally in the past is that the director meets with the personnel committee and goes over goal attainment for this year it would be the prior year, the year that's just completed, the calendar year that has just completed, and propose new goals for the new calendar year. Also, traditionally, when we're not in a multi-year contract, at the end of our fiscal year is when we do our director evaluation and negotiation for a contract. So our director's evaluation is kind of split up in two parts, giving both the board and the director an opportunity to visit goals and progress twice during the year, so that any corrections or further needs are dealt with in a timely manner instead of waiting till the end of the year. So at this point, we're looking at director's goal attainment and looking at later we'll be looking at proposing new goals. One thing the committee did strongly want to communicate, which I'd like to reiterate that before Steve goes over his goals, is that the committee was very, very pleased and excited about the work that staff and administration has done during a very unprecedented year. And even though we're in kind of a unique situational and fiscal position, the library remains strong and remains vibrant and remains connected to our community. And for those, we give kudos to our library leadership. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Steve, if you go over your goal attainment, and then we'll have an opportunity during and after for the board to ask questions.
All right, so if you're looking at your handout, this is going to be on page 19, where we'll start talking about the goal attainment. And what we had three large goals with subsets within each goal. And we went into some detail on all of this in the committee meeting. The first goal was to establish a culture of ongoing and continuous learning throughout the organization. The first sub-goal was involving the choosing of a learning management system so that to manage all the different types of training that was going on in the organization. The staff did select an LMS, learning management system. It's a cloud-based system. It was installed in the fourth quarter of 2020, and staff has started loading content onto that system. We also, second sub-goal, we wanted to have opportunities, the staff wanted to provide multiple opportunities for the board to focus on governance, professional values, other operations, in terms of training. And so the board was provided access to the staff affirmative defense mandatory training that we do every year. The board also was provided access to the staff mandatory training on online safety. The library director, or I, brought in an outside trainer, Lauren Palmer, from the Mid-America Regional Council to present information on the Sunshine Law and meeting organization using Robert's Rules of Order. And then also toward the end of the year, I was working with the former superintendent of the Blue Springs School District, Jim Finley, as he's been working with the Fort Osage School Board and others about board leadership and teamwork training. I just felt that what Mr. Finley or Dr. Finley's been instructing is interesting and might be worth possibly exposing our board to, but really just talking with him about that. So that's what we did around 1B. 1C involved the human resources team developing a criteria to evaluate the training. And so the HR team was part of the LMS learning management system selection process. They have been working on criteria to make sure that the information that's loaded is actually what needs to be done. These procedures are being codified, but have not been codified. Frankly, the HR team has been very much involved with contact tracing and things like that. And so, we did not fully complete this goal because we had other things that were more pending for the HR team. But the main goal here is that because we own a learning management system, we can put up any training we want to. We just want to make sure that the right people are installing the training. So for example, I don't want my story time people putting together training on how to use a fire extinguisher. I want to make sure that, Dustin, our safety and security manager, is providing that level of training. So that's part of what the HR team would be doing, is trying to figure out who loads training and who has the responsibility to do so. The last sub area, the management team will provide opportunities and incentives for their staff to avail themselves to new opportunities. So the affirmative defense training was provided for all employees, like it is every year. The safety and security training was provided for all employees and really expanded this year with Dustin on board. The safety and security training did include de-escalation as well as active shooter training and a few other important new trainings that Dustin developed. Our online training was online safety training. So, making sure that you don't accidentally click on malware and things like that. That training was provided for all of our employees. And then additional training associated with environmental changes like COVID-19 and anti-harassment training were provided for our staff. So we feel like we made pretty good inroads on this. Didn't complete it all, but frankly, it was because in many cases, we felt like our staff needed to be focused on other areas. So that's what we did. But did make some pretty positive inroads on this one. The second goal, implementation of an organization-wide plan to foster healthy communication for staff. Again, feel like we made some pretty good positive steps, but I do not feel like we fully attained that. So the first sub goal is that the senior administrative team will commit to communicate the value of healthy organizational communication culture. And so my team completed one full year following our new communication standards and our new meeting standards. What we determined at the end of our period working under this is that there was much more internal trust amongst the team members, and we're both much more deliberative, but we also speak with a single voice when we're finished. So in other words, we tussle out questions still, but once we're done, we speak with a single voice so that it's easier for our staff to know what it is that we're supposed to be doing as an organization. The sub-goal here, human resource team will lead development and design a plan to ensure it aligns with the mission, vision, and values. So much of this was pushed aside, again, because the HR team was working on COVID-19 issues, but they did work with Loretta Summers to help create, she's one of our training assistants, to help us with a training cohort amongst the leadership team, also known as the tactical team. And the library director, I worked with Loretta to help determine training for this group in the spring of 2020, but it got postponed as we became more and more comfortable, we became more and more comfortable with virtual training during COVID-19. Initially, it didn't seem very viable, but eventually it seemed to be more viable. That the management team will lead their staff in implementation and evaluation of the plan, And so, again, we worked with Loretta to work with these methods as they became more robust. And really, right at the end of the calendar year, we started working with the tactical team to start this additional training on healthy communication once people became more comfortable with working in a virtual environment. The final sub-goal here is that the Mid-Continent MCPL staff will participate in training and evaluation related to the plan, as well as employ respectful and professional communication strategies in their work at MCPL. So the annual affirmative defense anti-harassment training really does help to focus on this issue more than anything else. And of course, we did that again this year. With new directions from the EEOC and various court rulings, additional anti-harassment training, mostly focusing on LGBTQ plus rights and topics were provided as part of the affirmative defense. And then finally, much of what we planned was postponed due to COVID-19 and its failure, and that was really our failure to make some significant headway in this. So we did our affirmative defense and anti-harassment training, but didn't get much further than that due to COVID-19. The final goal was to evaluate and prioritize system-wide services to optimize organizational capacity. So our 4 sub-goals here: senior admin team developed organizational criteria to evaluate new and existing opportunities. So we did that. Our tactical team identified several services to evaluate. Due to opportunities provided through COVID-19, many services were evaluated, actually many more services maybe than what we might have even expected. And the senior leadership team did speak with John Huber as well as RSM Business Development to help guide program development, evaluation, and process improvement. Most of it, though, was just conversations and really didn't get much beyond those conversations with those 2 outside contractors. Our tactical team will inventory and evaluate existing system services using the criteria that was established by the senior admin team. And through this process, developed above, the senior leadership team agreed that the Library to Go service needs to be decommissioned. So that was one of the things that we developed our criteria, looked at it, began to evaluate it, and determined that we needed to decommission that. The next sub-goal that the MCPL management team will assess capacity for system-wide services and engage staff regarding recommendations to those services. So while we were shut down due to COVID-19, community programming, youth programming, story center programming, genealogy programming, and Square One programming services were all evaluated. There have been some alterations already made with our in-person programming procedures, which are still in process. So as our idea is that we are reevaluating the way that we're looking at all of our in-person programming, making sure that we're providing them in the most efficient and effective methods so that when we can get back to live programming, we can do so in the most effective way. So we're taking advantage of the time that we're closed down through this goal. And then we also, the Youth Services Department took a look at our summer library program and redeveloped it to make sure that it was streamlined and more effective, particularly last summer, made sure that it was more streamlined and effective during the pandemic, which they were able to effectively do. Finally, the MCPL staff will provide feedback to the management team concerning existing system-wide services and capacity. Most programs are still being evaluated this process and were delayed due to COVID-19. So once we took a look at all of the goals for 2020, the feeling amongst the library staff was that we felt like we had not achieved all of the goals. We felt if we were giving ourselves a letter grade, it was probably somewhere around a B- or a C+ in terms of attainment. And if we were talking about percentages, that we felt like in terms of our percentages, it was about 66.4% fulfillment, or about 4% of what would be awarded in terms of the award compensation. So with that, we concluded the report with to the Personnel Committee and asked for attainment at the rate of about 66.4 or 4%. But with one caveat, that regardless of the amount that, we think it's very important to go through the exercise and that everybody understand that we're doing, that we're trying to achieve the goals that we set out to do and that we evaluate them because that's part of good management. But given the conditions of the library and given the conditions of the world in general, it doesn't make sense for us to receive any performance compensation or award for performance compensation at this particular point in time. So regardless of what the board decides tonight, staff will not accept an award of compensation at this time.
And Steve, before we get into questions that the board may have, one of the things that the committee did talk about was the need for the committee to acknowledge the hard work that the staff has done. They had to pivot on a dime and continue to offer and in some ways totally revamp what they do as a library in order to meet the needs of people, to increase access despite having to close the doors, to address health and safety concerns, that we thought that the 66% was more than acceptable considering the added load that was handled very well by staff and administration. So one of the things that the board talked about was setting this 66% or 4% performance award for the director. And then consider at the end of our fiscal year, our financial situation and what the world looks like at that time, and make a final decision, especially around whether or not our remaining staff would be able to also partake in paper performance as well. So all those things taken into consideration. Does anyone have any questions for our director about the goals or any comments on the recommendation?
This is Brent. This is just a factual point. Steve, can you give a brief description of the Library to Go for the benefit of our board members?
Sure. The Library to Go program was something that we did. Oh gosh, I want to say that we did that right around 2010 or 2011, 2012, right in that ballpark. And the purpose of Library to Go was for us to expand library services without necessarily building buildings. And so what we did is we had computers, Wi-Fi, a book drop, and we also had smart lockers, which would allow you to request a book. We could put it in the locker and people could go and retrieve those items that they had requested. We had them set up in 4 different locations. In 2 locations, they just never took off in terms of volume. I mean, we were lucky to do 100 items a year out of those 2 locations. Other items, they were a little bit more popular, but we still had issues with volume. The volume just wasn't really cost beneficial in terms of people utilizing them. And so we just more or less decided that the way that we were implementing this, and most of this was a collaborative partnership with the Kansas City Parks Department. They actually had 3 of the 4 Library to Go locations. And the 4th Library to Go location was in the Platte County Resource Center. We, after looking at the amount of time that we put in, keeping the hardware working and balance that with the amount of activity that was going on. Like I said, in one location, it was only about 100 items checked out over the entire year. It just wasn't cost effective. So it's kind of what it was, what our hopes and dreams and aspirations were, and then what actually ended up happening.
Are there any other questions?
So Joycelyn, if you don't mind, can I reset this for the entire committee? So this did come as a recommendation from the committee to the full board, that the committee
Right.
will recommend to the full board a motion that expresses appreciation for their high value of the staff's efforts and award up to 4% or 66% attainment performance pay as a tentative decision. Final payment and final decision on award will be determined at the end of the fiscal year concerning fiscal status of the library. And so that did come from the committee as a recommendation, no second required.
Right. If there's no further discussion, we can move on to a vote. Michelle?
Sorry, I was on mute. I had to
That's okay.
go to my screen. Okay, do we want to go ahead and vote on that?
The motion has been made, I believe, by the committee.
Okay. And no one else had any other questions, correct?
I'm not hearing any, Michelle.
Okay, all right, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor?
John will second the motion, if that's required.
No,
I don't think we need one.
No seconds required. So if Michelle is calling for the question, then Teresa, can you call the roll for the vote?
Absolutely.
Can
Okay,
you please read the question again?
for the motion.
What are we voting on? Yes.
Whoop, hold on, sorry.
Teresa, do you want to go
You
ahead?
guys go ahead. Sorry, I'm having a problem.
Yeah, we got it.
Gotta look because I can't see.
Okay.
The committee will recommend to the full board a motion that expresses appreciation and their value of the staff's efforts and award up to 4% performance pay as a tentative decision. Final payment and final decision on the award will be determined at the end of the fiscal year, considering fiscal status of the library. And the motion's on the floor.
So go ahead and call the roll.
So you want to, I'm going to go ahead and call the roll for the vote. Joycelyn?
Yay.
John Laney?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Rita?
Yes.
Charlotte?
Yes.
Yummy?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So motion carries there, but as we look on to the crafting new goals for 2021, just as in last year where we set goals and then everything went awry, we're still at a point in 2021 where we're not exactly sure what the year will be as we proceed. Our director has taken a look at proposed goals with his leadership team, and the committee are recommending that we go ahead and approve those goals. At this point, I'll turn that over to Steve.
Right, so to be clear, this is coming, what I'm about to talk about comes as a recommendation from the committee and its approval of the following goals, 2021 goals of the library director and CEO. So there's 4 goals for 2021. Goal number 1, that MCPL management team will implement and foster organizational-wide effort to foster healthy communication and continuous learning amongst MCPL staff. So goal 1 is really essentially a continuation and consolidation, if you will, of the remaining parts of goal 1 and 2 from the previous year. As you recall, as I was going through goal attainment, I kept saying, we did this, but we didn't get to that. So this is the that part that we didn't get to. So really in terms of language, it's much the same, that the human resources team will lead the development procedures, and guidelines to ensure alignment with the MCPL mission, vision, and values. And that's around the training, so that the HR team helps to assure that we have guidelines for who puts up the training and who's allowed, who's seen as having the credentials to put up training and things like that. That the MCPL tactical team will continue working together on healthy communication techniques, that MCPL management team will adopt these techniques throughout their areas, and that the senior leadership team will support continuing to build an environment of continuous learning that was initially developed in 2020. So that's goal 1 for 2021. Moving to goal 2 for 2021, evaluate and prioritize system-wide services to optimize organizational capacity. So again, this really builds on goal 3 from the previous year. So there's really a couple of sub-goals here, that the MCPL senior administration team will develop organizational criteria for evaluating existing services and new opportunities. Potential areas that we will be looking at will include programming, materials processing, our warehousing, and our central collection warehouse as potential areas for us to examine. The tactical team will inventory and evaluate existing system-wide services using the criteria established by the senior administrative team in 2019. That's goal number 2. Goal number 3 is a brand new goal, but something that we should be doing about this time of year, or this time in our strategic plan cycle, I should say. So revisit and update the organizational pillars. So the chief operating officer will review and update processes around collections, especially focusing on community programming, youth services, programming, and materials acquisition. Community Relations and Planning Director will review the external communication processes, especially focusing on social media and target market communication. The Finance and Facilities Director with the Capital Projects Manager will develop a draft capital maintenance plan so that we can start determining how we're going to be maintaining the buildings that we are renovating and building right now. The next sub-goal, Development Director will review campaign and strategies to supplement private giving, especially focusing on consumable services. The next sub-goal, Human Resources Director will review policies and practices to assure that MCPL provides internal opportunities for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then finally, the Chief Technology Officer will review the technology environment to assure that the current direction and practices place the library in the best place to provide services. The guideline on this is that my team's going to try to be working on these sub-goals significantly over the next few months. And what we want to try to do is be able to update all of these capacity pillars between now and when it's time for us to start drafting the budget, because we believe that a lot of these efforts and initiatives will have budgetary implications. So then the final goal, goal 4, is to evaluate the strategic plan priorities and progress. There are 3 sub-goals here. Evaluate the data inputs and demographics that we've used for our strategic plan. Develop a plan to conduct 2 to 4 community needs assessments once the public health situation makes that possible. And then the third goal is develop a structure for community needs assessments at the branch or at the community level. And frankly, these are things that we probably would have tried to have done in 2020. With our evergreen strategic plan, the idea is that every so often you do need to step back and take a look at where we are and make sure that we're still heading in the right direction, that our community thinks we're heading in the right direction, and that we're headed in the right direction. And if we're wrong, then we need to reevaluate and do a course correction. And so that's kind of what goal 4 is. Essentially, goal 4 is planning to plan in that parlance for strategic planning, and hoping that if we are able to do so, that we'll actually be able to do a couple of these plans or a couple of these community needs assessments when the environment allows us to do so. So with that, these were the 4 goals that that I brought to the Personnel Committee. And as mentioned, that these were, that the Personnel Committee did have a lot of questions for me, that we adjusted and tweaked these some. And then the committee voted to bring these to the full board for adoption for 2021.
Thanks, Steve. Given that the committee has recommends approval of the goals brought to us by staff, there's no second needed, and so we can entertain any questions or comments at this time, and then I'll hand that over to our board president for the vote.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any questions or comments. I think we'll go ahead and take the vote now. Go ahead and call the questions. And Teresa, do you want to do the roll call?
Yes. John?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Rita?
Yes.
Charlotte?
Yes.
Yummy?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Thank you.
And Teresa Joycelyn also votes yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right. So then I guess
Yeah, I think we have nothing further.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
We have nothing further from the Personnel Committee, I believe.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Joycelyn. Moving on to Finance and Audit Committee.
Okay. Finance and Audit Committee met on January 19th. All members were present, and we considered 2 action items and 2 informational items. And of course, we'll start first with the action items, but I would like to say a word or 2 about the committee itself and the committee process, especially for the benefit of our new members. The purpose of these committees is to be able to go into a great deal more depth than the board as a whole is usually able to or wants to in many cases, and to make recommendations to the board. Our job is not to make final decisions, but rather to make recommendations after as thorough a review as we can make. We try to meet monthly and are responsible for the annual budget, the annual audit, and library investment and borrowing. So our job is to recommend and report to the board on financial matters. And so what you'll see now is a couple of recommendations that require your final action and a couple of recommendations which are informational to you about important financial positions of the library as a whole. Okay, so the action items involve 2 things. First is the question of subsidized development. You wonder why the library is involved in subsidized development, but I hope to make that clear to you, and property liquidation. On the subject of subsidized development, local governments, that is cities and counties primarily, are authorized to use tax abatement, and they do so typically, they believe, as an incentive to activating growth in their communities. Now, the abatement most often involves property taxes, that is to say both real estate and personal property taxes. and some abatement of the taxes which the project pays over some period of time. Now, generally, by board policy, we don't like those. And generally, we oppose such abatements for fairly obvious reasons, because 95% of our revenue is from property taxes. And each time an award of incentive is made by a local government, why the organizations like us who are dependent upon property taxes lose the benefit of the property tax, of the additional property tax that would be engendered by the new project for the most part. So we've taken the position that we're opposed to property taxes, and particularly those that are related to residential development for a variety of reasons, which I won't go into, but that is our official policy, that we are opposed to such awards by local government for residential development. But given that, we were asked by a developer in the Northland, specifically a developer proposed developer of 256 units, residential units, apartment units, in the south part of Briarcliff. I think everyone is familiar with the Briarcliff development, very successful project in the Northland in Kansas City. And so this is a part that was left over basically from the development of Briarcliff, and is proposed to be developed into 256 housing units. Now, I think I should say we listened to the developer. We heard him out. He had some very persuasive reasons why this was should be an exception, and he asked us to at least not oppose the project if we were not able to actually recommend the project. So we heard him out completely, and we heard a lot about the project, and the result of that is that we believe that this is a legitimate exception to our policy, in the sense that we should not take opposition to it. Not that we should not take opposition to it. Yes, that's very different than recommending it be approved. That's up to the agencies that are involved. But we are recommending do not oppose. Now, there are a number of reasons for that that persuaded us as a committee to make this recommendation. And one was that the current property is, as I recall it, is a very troubled piece of policy that has had a lot of fill in it, clean fill, but nevertheless fill that makes it more difficult to build structures on it. And the property tax that we actually have been receiving from that property, as I recall, is about $600 a year, which is a very small amount, and not material insofar as our total receipts are concerned. We found that the abatement would only be partial. That is, they could have asked for 100% abatement of property taxes during that period of time. They're only asking for 65%, and actually that even declines as the project goes forward for the 15-year period that's involved here, so that the amount of property taxes that we received from the project would increase over time during the course of the project. And I don't recall, and maybe Quan or Steve could help me on this, but I believe that the amount of unabated property tax that we would receive if this project is built is about $130,000 a year. Am I close to that, Steve?
I'd have to double check. I think that's a little high. I think that's the total amount.
The library, I believe it's for $60,000,
It was like 56,000.
$50,000 to $60,000 after the
Okay.
abated.
It was,
Yeah,
it was about half
60,000.
that
So,
amount.
yeah, so from $600 to $60,000 a year is quite a significant increase, and so those incentives, the way they're being handled, they're recommended to be handled, would actually result in an increase. Also, and unusually, this project is supported by the North Kansas City School District. So we recommend that the board take a position not to oppose the project. This is keeping our current policy intact, but recognizes the merits of the project. So I would so move.
And then
Any
to clarify,
questions?
that does come as a recommendation from the committee, so no second is required.
That's correct. It is a unanimous recommendation of the committee.
Do we have any questions or comments?
This is Lori Lemunion. I have one question. So it's 60,000. Will that be the first year? And then what is the increase every year after that for the 15 years?
I think the 60,000 is an average cost over that period of time, but I'll defer to Quan on that. Is that correct? It'll be 30. What it'll amount to is 35% of the total assessed valuation for the property as it's been approved, and I think that amounts to $60,000 a year. But I'll ask Juan to clarify.
I believe that's the total amount before the abatement.
Yeah, so
First, yeah.
Yeah, so what happens is years 1 through 8, 35% of the library's taxes flow through to us. And then in year 7, 60%, well, let me do it the other way around, 40% flows through. And then the following year, 45, and then 50, then 60, then 70, then 80, then 90% in year 15. And so this is where this is highly unusual. And this was actually what the North Kansas City School District negotiated and later actually approved. So the North Kansas, what John and the committee recommends is that we take no position. What the North Kansas City School District is actually doing is they're actually supporting this. They are taking a position and supporting this. And the reason why is because it is so unusual. Typically in a program like this, year 1 is 100%, and year 2 is 100%, and year 15 is 100%, and year 23 is 100%. That's why this is so unusual. And so the feeling is that as there are new people moving into these apartments, which will be just down the road from the Riverside branch, we will be receiving new revenue in order to serve them. And so because of that, we felt, the committee felt, and staff actually does agree with the committee, that this is a unique approach, and so it is worth looking at. So actually, if you look on page 40 of your handout, it actually shows the entire abatement level and the pass-through and how much of that is actually going through to each entity. And the way you can read this table, if you can actually read it, is if you look at year 1, it'll say property taxes $500,000 pilot. That's the payment in lieu of taxes is $175,000, and so that's what gets divided up amongst the various districts. And you can see that that number slowly increments up and actually starts to increment up much quicker once you get into year 8 and 9, which is what makes it unusual. Now, Lori, I know you basically were just asking for a number, and I talked all the way around the number, and I didn't mean to do that. But what I was really wanting to do was kind of show you, the structure of this and how this is so unusual. So hopefully that was helpful.
It was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is a significant amount over what we would be receiving if it stayed unused like it is now, which is, we do know that that's currently $600 a year. Yeah, so it would be significantly greater. I think I'm not really completely aware of what that total figure is, but I know it's very significant.
I believe, John, that we did a back of the envelope
yes, we
estimate.
did, and that's what I can't remember to call.
Yeah, and I think it was between $15,000 and $20,000 on average, as opposed to the $600 that we were talking about. Juan, does that sound right, or am I?
They cost 60%.
Yeah.
So during the first 9 years. So it's 40% of that.
Okay.
So 40% of the $50,000, about 20.
That's about 20, 15 to 20, back of the envelope.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's significant.
Okay, are there any other questions? All right, well then I think we go ahead and take a vote. Teresa, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am. Joycelyn?
Aye.
Steve?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Rita? Charlotte?
Yes.
Yemi?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Great, thank you. John, do you have anything else?
Yes, we do. We have another action item, and then I have a couple of informational items. The next action item for consideration by the board is on the subject of disposal of surplus property. Finance Committee is charged with property disposal issues, and so the director asked us to review all of our property and decide which, if any, should be considered for disposal. And we did that. We met in our previous meeting and recommended that we recommended to the full board that 2 properties, the current Liberty branch and the past Redbridge branch be considered for disposal and actually put on the market for disposal. We took that recommendation to the board. The board approved that. And so the staff did make a lot of effort to get bids on those 2 projects that were identified as being right for disposal. And the result of that was that we only got 1 interested bidder, and that was on the Liberty site, and that was the Liberty School District. Is that right? I'm saying that right? The Liberty School District, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. It was the Liberty School District, and the Liberty School District bid the sum of $750,000 for the site and the building itself. And we understand that is somewhat below the assessed. I started to say assessed valuation, below the value of the property as has been estimated, and it is, but it's the only interest that we received after a lot of effort was made to try to stimulate interest by a variety of different means in both of the properties. The only one received was the Liberty School District in a sum of $750,000. After considerable discussion, the committee recommends that we still feel that that is a site that needs to be disposed of, and that despite a somewhat higher estimate of its value, we feel that this is the best that we can do at the current time, and probably the best we can do overall. So we recommend that we accept the bid of the Liberty School District in the amount of $750,000, and thus dispose of the Liberty site and the building thereon.
Okay, do we have any questions, comments? And it might be helpful for people that haven't been here. Maybe part of why we came to this decision as well was because if you know anything about our branches, like we hung on to Smithville for a very long time. We've had other buildings that we've done this to, and it's just gonna, I don't know, I felt like it's gonna be more cost effective to do it this way.
That was exactly our feeling. I mean, we could wait around some more. The chances are, given the amount of interest that we had after a lot of effort to gain that interest, we feel that waiting is not going to produce a better result. And the fact is that we have a legitimate bid, and a serious one, from an agency with which we've worked and are partners, and we feel that that we should accept it. Happy to have other questions.
Okay, well, it sounds like we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Teresa?
Joycelyn?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Rita?
Yes.
Charlotte?
Yes.
Yummy?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, John, if I may, just real quickly, just to bring, because we were talking about two branches, we were talking about former
Yes,
Liberty
I was
branch
gonna-
and former Red Bridge branch. And what the committee recommended that we do is to continue to entertain offers to get a solid offer in writing from Lane 4, because they have actually expressed interest in the Red Bridge branch in the past. And to continue to essentially soft sell it for the next 6 months and revisit, hopefully when we're getting on the other side of the pandemic. The Red Bridge Shopping Center, they're doing some incredible things there in terms of it being a lifestyle center, but this is absolutely the wrong time for us to be looking to, sell that property and turn it into a restaurant, for example.
Yeah, I was going to add that that the committee urged that we continue to make efforts toward the sale of the Red Bridge property, but obviously it's not marketable at this current moment, and so we do need to spend more time on that and put more effort into it to see if it possibly can be sold. Okay. No further comments on that. We'll move on and we'll look at the informational items. The first one is, and this is a very happy item to report, we have the responsibility of looking carefully at what's happening to our revenues and our expenses, given the uncertainty with which we entered into this budget. We entered into it knowing that we had a pandemic and knowing that there is a possibility that our 95% of our revenues might be in some jeopardy from property taxes. And because of the pandemic and related economic fallback from that, And so we entered into the year trying to construct a budget that would have savings built into it to allow us to continue with our program should there be a revenue shortfall. Well, I'm happy to say that at the current time, there's not only is there not a revenue shortfall, there is a revenue increase. The amounts received from the counties to date in the property tax collections are approximately $1.9 million higher than they were in the previous year. And combine that with the fact that the budgeted efforts because of the pandemic have produced a savings of about 1.9 million. So we can't say with surety that this won't change until the end of the year, but at the current time, I think it's the committee's belief that we're in very good financial condition, much better than we anticipated we would be at this time. And so we're delighted with that. But we're going to have to be watchful and aware of the future. And so I appreciate the recommendations of the Personnel Committee, which unfortunately delayed the payout of very well-earned performance incentives until we can assure that we're going to finish the year in a positive situation. It looks good for now, though. It looks good for now, and we're very grateful for that. So that's our informational, one of our informational items, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to entertain those. Any further comments, Quan or Steve, you want to make about that?
No, not at this. Probably the only other point to mention is that at the end of the budget, when we finish the audit, one of the things that the auditors determined is that we have about $3.4 million in unassigned fund balance from fiscal year 1920. So if you add that, plus the $3.8 million in savings and increase in revenue, we're closer to about $7 million ahead right now. Now, $7 million isn't a lot in the grand on a $50 million budget, but all of this does suggest that although we might not be out of the woods, we can definitely see the light at the end. That it's looking like things are going to be okay.
Yes, it does. Okay, thank you, Steve. Other questions? All right, I will move on to our final item of information, and that is the Capital Project Fund. We had some discussion with the chair of the building committee and with Steve, and decided that it was worthwhile for the finance committee to take a clear look at where we are with our capital projects. Most of us, I think, are aware that in 2016 we approved Proposition L, which was a major achievement. It was approved by over 62% in all of our counties, and it allowed us to engage a major capital improvement program. And we've been working at that steadily from that time forward, and we're making tremendous progress. But we thought, well, it's time that we kind of stop and take a look and make sure that now we're probably about 2/3 completed with this. And how much do we have left to do, and how much money do we have available to spend on how much we have left to do? So we did that, and we took a very kind of deep dive into that situation, and our information to give to you is also happy, and that is that we feel that we are very capable of having the amount of capital dollars necessary to complete our work as envisioned initially and as promised to the voters in the plan that was voted on in Proposition L. So we're very happy that that's our conclusion at this point. Of course, we'll have to continue to monitor it just like we do our operating funds. But at this time, it appears that the staff and all the people involved have done an absolutely outstanding job in getting this done as quickly as we've been able to do, and still maintaining an equal balance between revenues and expenditures so that we can complete the final activities of that. So unless there are questions, I think you can feel assured that we're in good shape now, and it looks like we're going to continue to stay in that, but we'll continue to monitor it and report anything necessary to the full board. That unless there are questions, Madam Chairman, that completes our report.
Thank you so much, John, and thanks to everybody in all those committees. I know that there's a lot of work this month and every month, but I know we had a lot of work this month, so I appreciate everybody. Moving on, Steve, the floor is yours for the librarian's report.
So I have three primary issues to mention. The first one is not really on your agenda, but it's just a quick report. It's about the Mid-Continent Public Library Foundation. The foundation board did meet in December for one of for the most recent update meeting, and sort of had an update, talked about the 1099 filing, talked about several different issues, and committed to get back together in February for a follow-up meeting. As a general rule, because the foundation is a separate entity, although several members of the library board and me sat on that board, there's always opportunities for us to kind of talk about things, particularly if there are major initiatives that the foundation's undertaking or ways that the foundation is interacting. But for the most part, it was an update meeting and sort of realigning everything. And there will be a meeting, as I mentioned, next month with the foundation. So just a real quick update on that. The other 2 points that I wanted to talk with you about, the first is an Overdrive update. Now, Overdrive is our vendor partner for most of our online content. Oh, well, not most of our online content, I should back up. It's the vendor partner for things like our ebooks and many of our e-audiobooks and many of our streaming movie services. And so we have been a large partner with Overdrive for a long time. We are typically one of the top 10 libraries in terms of Overdrive use every year. And we actually had some pretty interesting numbers. They always send out aggregate numbers for their library partners on a calendar year basis, and they just sent those to us. So if you look on slide or on page 51, you'll see that there were some pretty interesting things that happened. Our overall circulation, 3.3 million Overdrive items, or a 28% increase this year over last year. Not a big surprise for a 28% increase given what we've all been through over the last 12 months. But in terms of ebooks, 34% increase in utilization. In terms of e-audiobooks, 18% increase in utilization. And in terms of videos, e-videos, streaming videos, 45% increase in utilization. So if we go to page 52 of your packet, you can visually see some of these bumps. And you can see, for example, in terms of ebooks, our total ebook, 2.1 million items. You can see 1.3 million items in 2018. So, almost, pretty significant increase just over a 2-year period. E-audiobooks, again, nice longitudinal increase. And our e-videos don't actually show up on the bar chart, even though the percentage is so high, the numbers are still low. And so that's what happens there. But you can see in terms of overall totals, just a really nice stair step in terms of utilization. If we go to the next slide, in terms of users, this is where it gets kind of interesting. 31% increase in unique users. And so we went from 75,000 unique users to 98,000 unique users of Overdrive services in the library district. This is something, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't wish a global pandemic on anybody, but we would never get this level of disruption to get people to try new services without something like this. And so we saw the opportunity, leveraged the opportunity, and what we've seen is a 31% increase in new unique users of the Overdrive system. And so if you go to the next slide, slide 54, what we see here, and I think this is a really important one, is Overdrive children's circulation. And you can see this went up significantly, that it went up in terms of ebooks from 220,000 to 460,000 ebooks, children's ebooks. And in terms of e-audio books, 113,000 to 156,000. Now that's being driven by two different things. One of the reasons why that number is going up is our student accounts that we have with many of our school districts is helping to drive that. So that number would have went up significantly even without COVID. But as you can see with the pandemic and people having to learn from school, learn from home, checking out children's materials doubled, a little more than doubled this year, which makes a lot of sense, but it also shows that we were able to pivot, get the licenses that we needed so that we could fulfill that level of demand. So I feel pretty good about this, but I wanted to share this with you as well, because I think that this does show the types of activities that we were able to accomplish just with one of our primary vendor partners. Now, we have other vendor partners, including some of our magazine vendors, which are not Overdrive, and some of our online content and online databases and online encyclopedias and people like that, which are not Overdrive. And so this is just a component, and you can see that there was significant increase in terms of how we were able to service our population over the last 12 months. So that concludes my Overdrive update. The last thing that I wanted to share with you is our COVID-19 dashboard. Now, I think November was the first year that the first month that we actually did this, and I promised that I would share this ongoing dashboard with you to kind of show you what it is that is happening in terms of our library system. One of the things you'll notice if you look at the chart that's in the upper left-hand corner, you can see that the bars stair step upward and then start going down in November and December. And then the one at the very end is a grand total number. Now, we don't want to get too excited too quickly, but one of the things that we did, and we talked about this a little bit in November, is that we were going to start changing some of our operational procedures. And most of this was being driven by the fact that we had some higher community positive rates and increasing contact tracing and closures at Mid-Continent. So if you look at the number of closures in October, we had 7 branch closures, and then November 11. So we were definitely going in the wrong direction. But in December, it went down to 6, and then as of midway through January, there were only 3 branch closures. So I think that what ended up happening, we made a lot of changes in what we were doing. And these changes really have been decreasing the likelihood that we have to close for all services. And in fact, right now, as of right now today, and I'm going to knock on wood, there are no branches that are closed. But if we were still operating under the procedures and processes that we had in October, there would have been at least 4 branches closed today. So I think we figured out some processes where we're able to do some things that allow us to keep our locations open, but also allow our staff to be safe. And so I'm feeling positive, or at least optimistic, about where we are. Currently, if you look at the little table in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see that the current positive testing is about 12.7%. amongst Mid-Continent employees. And this isn't truly comprehensive, but compared to the region, the positivity rate in the region is more than twice this amount. But amongst our staff, it's about 12%, which is almost tolerable. So one of the things that's happening is due to a lot of the favorable outcomes that have occurred over the last several weeks, that my staff is beginning to look at ways that we can start adding back in our technology services. Having people be able to come back into the building to use computers and fax machines and things like that. We don't have a date that we can announce quite yet, but we are working on that process right now. Due to the positive outcomes in the way that we are currently operating. Of course, if things change, if the community conditions change, or if our staff conditions change, then of course we'll have to change directions as well. But right now things are heading in the right direction for us, even though they may not be heading in the right direction for the larger community. So I think that's all I have on librarian's report. Happy to answer any questions, but otherwise I'll turn it back to you, Michelle.
Can you tell me the difference in overdrive?
Can you repeat that? I'm not sure it's talking. We couldn't hear that.
What is the difference between Libby and overdrive?
Oh, okay, thank you. The difference between Libby and Overdrive, Libby is the app that Overdrive for the Overdrive service. So in essence, they are synonymous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I just want to
Moving
remark,
on.
Michelle,
Yep.
I just want to remark that this is an amazing accomplishment to keep the library going with such detail. This is amazing. I want to compliment everybody on their efforts. It's fantastic.
Thank you. I think everybody's done an amazing job as well. All right, moving on to new business. Paid parental leave policy, the second reading.
Okay, so and for the newer board members, what tends to happen on a new business item is that I tend to sort of tee it up and then you guys take it from there. The first two items are second readings. So by Robert's rules, typically what happens is that we do a first reading. In this case, we did the first reading in November. We ask for any discussion to occur at the time. We ask for board members to send in questions, comments, concerns. Just FYI, we received none of those on either one of these two items. And so as Phil Grubaugh, our attorney, has trained me, on a second reading, it's essentially an up or down vote at this point. So both of these should go pretty quickly. You can ask some clarification questions, but it's basically an up or down vote. So, and based on how Robert's rules works. So the paid parental leave second reading, the issue is staff presented a proposal for paid parental leave to the Personnel Committee in October of 2019. The proposal was considered by the Personnel Committee and referred to the Finance Committee in April of 2020 for potential fiscal impact. The proposal was taken back to the Personnel Committee and a memo resetting the entire matter was shared with the committee in September. The proposed policy change is as follows. Section 352.1, paid parental leave. This is the new policy. Mid-Continent Public Library allows up to 6 weeks of paid parental leave to benefits eligible employees following the birth of an employee's child or the placement of a child with an employee in connection with adoption or foster care. The purpose of paid parental leave is to enable the employee to care for and bond with the newborn or newly adopted or newly placed child. This policy will run concurrently with Family Medical Leave Act, FMLA, leave as applicable. The policy will be in effect for births, adoptions, or placements of foster children. That's the end of the policy. Staff recommendation, board adopts the second reading of the paid parental leave policy. Values of the MCPL strategic plan is stewardship. The library believes that the public and private dollars entrusted to us must be used effectively and efficiently to improve the community.
I'm going to ask, are there any questions, comments, anything from? All right. We'll go ahead and call the question. We'll take the vote. Teresa?
Okay. Joycelyn,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Brent,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Rita, Charlotte,
Yes.
Yummy,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Noel, Noel,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay. Is that it, Teresa?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, moving on to 7.2, the vacation policy, second reading as well on this.
Right, so another second reading. Policy 348, vacation leave, states that, quote, "The total amount of vacation carried over on June 30 may not exceed the employee's current annual vacation accrual rate," end quote. Since there is no requirement to take vacation leave, it is not unusual for staff to find themselves with surplus leave credits toward the end of the fiscal year. This results in tenured employees being forced to take time off in April, May, and June at a busy time for the library. Staff suggested a change to the banked vacation leave credit policy to the Personnel Committee in September. This change will encourage staff to take time off and to provide more scheduling flexibility. The proposed change to policy 348 is as follows. Strike the paragraph, quote, "The total amount of vacation carried over June 30 may not exceed the employee's current annual vacation accrual rate," end quote, and replace it with the following, quote, "The employee's vacation credit balance may not exceed the employee's current maximum annual vacation accrual rate on March 31 and September 30, end quote. Staff recommendation, board adopt the second reading of the vacation policy revision. Values to the strategic plan, again, is stewardship. The library believes that the public and private dollars entrusted to us must be used effectively and efficiently to improve service to our community.
Okay, are there any, same as last time, I mean, just because we have new members, I'm going to ask, are there any questions or comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Teresa?
Joycelyn,
Yes.
John, Steve,
Yes.
John,
I think John left. I saw in the note that he had to leave.
okay. Cody, Brian, do you have that listed? Okay. John is gone. Wait just a second, please. Brent,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Rita, Charlotte,
Yes.
Yummy,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Noel,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Now moving on to 7.3, the reciprocal lending agreement.
Okay, and so this is going to be something new. Even the people who have been on the library board for a long, long time have never had one of these before them before. So over time, MCPL has entered into separate reciprocal borrowing agreements with Kansas City Public Library, North Kansas City Library, Ray County Library, and Rolling Hills Consolidated Library. MCPL extends reciprocal borrowing to library districts and their customers if they share a boundary with MCPL, and all other library, and the other library has a full membership to the Mid-America Library Alliance. In review of our policies and procedures, staff discovered that it has been MCPL's practice to extend reciprocal borrowing to Henry County. Although Henry County is an MALA, Mid-America Library Alliance member, it does not share a boundary with MCPL. Staff approached Henry County about entering into a separate reciprocal agreement based on the Rolling Hills Agreement, which is the most recent one that we entered into. The Henry County Library Board did approve the agreement at their January 2021 meeting without change. So staff recommends approval of the reciprocal lending agreement. The strategic value is service, that the library believes that the customer should be the center of all we do. And the reciprocal lending agreement is attached in board docs, and I would be happy to answer any questions that we might have on that. I guess we should have a motion in a second before there are any discussions, so.
Well, I move we consider the reciprocal lending agreement.
That's Charlotte.
That was Charlotte. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, I second.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, now to questions, discussion.
Steve, do we have one for Johnson County and Wyandotte County?
Steve, Johnson and Wyandotte fall into that other category that I mentioned, that they are a library district that borders us. We share a boundary with them, and they are members of the Mid-America Library Alliance. So we have a de facto agreement with them. We don't have a separate written agreement.
So if I go into Johnson County with my Mid-Continent Library card, I can check out a book.
They will create a new account for you, but yes, they extend full privileges to you. And we extend full privileges to people who live in Olathe.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No other comments or questions? All right, we'll go ahead and take a vote.
Joycelyn,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Brent,
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Rita,
Yes.
Charlotte,
Yes.
Yummy,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Joelle. One more time for John Laney to make sure he's gone. Not make sure he's gone, but.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Then we're going to move on to announcements, 8.1.
So in terms of announcements, we do have a calendar that we'll get out to you pretty soon. Probably a couple of things that we want to make sure that you know about, other than the committee meetings, which are always on the calendar, is that the Library Lovers Virtual Book Club via Zoom will be on February the 13th, And to keep in mind that on February 15th, all library locations will be closed because it's President's Day. That was all my announcements, Michelle.
Oh my gosh, I've been sitting here talking and I was on mute. That's just great.
That's okay.
You should know if I'm quiet, it's probably just the mute thing. All right, so moving on to trustees' comments. I guess, or does anyone have a comment? Okay, then everyone speak at once. The only thing I was going to say is that, like I said, once again, welcome to the new board members. I have filled in some committee positions just because we had some openings that I needed to fill in, that Teresa is going to be sending out a survey to everybody, just trying to see where people's interests lie. A lot of times, we do like to try to place people where their interests lie, but sometimes it does come down to where we need people. I know I've been here for 9 years and I've been put on committees that I wasn't quite so sure about, and I'm now grateful I've been on them. So because it just gets you to learn a little bit more about other areas of the library. But so please be expecting that here soon. Other than that, I don't have anything else. Great job to staff, and thank you so much for all that you do.
Yeah, I would comment as well. Great job to staff, and you guys have done an amazing job. So keep up the good work, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I guess I'll take a motion for adjournment.
I can call the roll.
I'll second.
Okay, hold on. Joycelyn? No.
Michael and Joycelyn. I don't think you need to call the roll.
Stay on here until I get done.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thanks for trying out the new environment. I think Zoom worked pretty well for us, and I think we'll probably stick with it. So
Yeah.
thank
good.
you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.